All right, here we go. All right, hi everybody. This is the second recording that we've done regarding the upcoming Northeast Trade Mission to Boston in October. And in the first session, Kirsten Chambers of the British Consulate in Boston and I kind of gave an overview of the opportunity here and my own perspective of what I see as I think some of the promise in this region. This is the second session that we wanted to kind of share with you, and there's a fellow Geordie friend of mine, Paul Willis, who's here with me today, and Paul's the CEO and president of Seacoast United, which is a very successful club in the region. I'll have Paul tell you a little bit about it. So for the purpose of this second session, it was really to get you exposed to somebody else in the region from the northeast who's got a perspective on almost the art of the possible and what can be done in the area. In addition to obviously the presence that I've had, as well as obviously what the consulate and the other teams are going to share with you. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Paul Willis. So Paul, thanks for coming to have a conversation.
Thank you.
Can you give us a little bit of background, Paul, about yourself, just so that people can know what you've done and where you're from originally, root-wise?
Well, I kind of bounced around the northeast as a youngster. Lived down by the coast, and I finished up my education at Ponteland High School.
Right.
But my kind of pathway to coming over to the States was initially started with Montague Boys Club. I was part of the first soccer team ever to come over to Atlanta, Georgia as part of the Friendship Force.
Right.
So for somebody like me, I'd never been in an airport, let alone been on an aeroplane at 14. And just that brief time in Atlanta opened my eyes, and I was going to stick in with soccer, but also
Right.
what a fantastic country it was. And I ended up playing for Newcastle United for the juniors. Unfortunately, got released at 18.
Right.
But I say unfortunately when in many ways I could say fortunately. Newcastle helped me come over here on a soccer scholarship.
Right, okay.
With contacts, and
Right.
that was back in 1984, and I've never really looked back since then.
So from your time in Atlanta, what then brought you to the New England area?
Well, we had 10 days in Atlanta, so that was my first experience of America, and I
Right.
couldn't believe how hospitable the people were. We stayed with families. It was just a fantastic experience.
Right.
I ended up coming over to college here to West Virginia Wesleyan, which is about 10, 11 hours away from Boston.
Right.
And had a very successful 4 years there. Worked for the college for a little while. There was no MLS back
Right.
in those days.
Okay.
And I ended up working for the admission office, representing them in New England as well as Western Europe. And after a very successful 2 years, they allowed me to move up to New England, and
Right.
I settled in the Seacoast area of New Hampshire, which is about an hour from Boston, and I've been there since 1990.
So how did you come about setting up Seacoast United? What was the sort of thinking behind that, and how did you know that you would succeed in building a business like that?
I didn't. Really just, I mean, Montague Boys Club's the best soccer experience I've ever had in my life. The friends that I made there, and
Right.
the opportunity, because it was just, I lived out in the countryside, so it was fantastic for me.
Where is Montague? Where is that? Where's Montague?
It's in the West End
West End.
area, yeah,
That's
in the
right.
West End. So anyway, there was nothing like that in New Hampshire.
Mhm.
And the former head coach at the University of New Hampshire, him and I started a club, really just opportunities for kids, two teams. Over the course of a couple of years, grew to 5 teams. I had left my job at the college.
Right.
And gone in to work for a software company. And cut a long story short, they wanted me to be sales manager for Canada.
Okay.
And I'd already made the big move from England to West Virginia to New England, and I didn't want to move. So I just got it in me.
Right.
That I wonder what would happen if I got this club and rolled my sleeves up and said, let's have a go. And
Right.
that's what I did. And ever since then, really, so that was 1996, I went full time. And since then, we've grown to where we have various facilities, over 50 full-time staff, hundreds of part-time staff, and
Right.
I'm proud to say that we're making a big impact with the kids in the community.
Right. How easy was it to set up a business? Number one, you're not originally from the US, so you've got to kind of learn the business system. You're also not necessarily from the region, New England, so you've got to learn that culture. But can you just share the comparison of how or actually go through how it was to set up a business, and then secondly, the sort of correlation between New England culture, and by New England I mean sort of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts. That's the broad region as we describe it in the States, but obviously we're in Boston, which is in Massachusetts. Your business is predominantly in New Hampshire, if I
Yeah.
remember rightly. Can you just describe culturally how the two regions are alike,
Well,
northeast of England and New England?
well, I've always thought of Boston is the Newcastle of America.
Right.
You know, it's in the northeast of the country.
Yeah.
It's not New York. It's not DC. But it's been a great place. I've raised my family here. It's obviously very close. I mean, people think it's a long way away. It's
Right.
5.5, 6 hour flight from London.
Right.
So there's a lot of similarities. I think people from the northeast are very hospitable. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a proud Geordie, as you are.
Yeah.
But people over here are very similar as well. It's not that they, wave and all this kind of stuff. Whereas when I was living in the south, they were very open and what have you. But once you get to know people over here in this area, I've found it a fantastic place to not only bring up a family but also do business.
Yeah.
When I went full time with the club, we were actually a non-profit organization.
Oh, yeah.
So we had no money in the bank. There was no salary. So I really did go off on a limb to see if I could make this happen. One of the big advantages to this country is, I think, if you're from England and you're willing to work hard. I mentioned this the other day to somebody. I'm fond of being called a grafter.
Right.
So if you work hard over here and you're willing to give people the time of day and treat people the way you'd like to be treated yourself, doors open.
Right.
So even though I lack some business experience, I knew a lot of people, and I'm smart enough to know when I'm not smart.
Right.
And then I'll ask the question, and people have an affection for people from the UK.
Right.
The history, the culture,
Yeah.
all of those things. So just, I have a word that I think is often undervalued in the English language, and that word is being nice.
Right.
Just the word nice. And I've tried to treat people the right way, and in return, I've gotten a lot of very good advice.
Right.
A lot of people have tried to support some of the things that we've done, not financially, but just willingness to help. This is how you approach this group, etc., etc.
Right.
And our big transformation came in '97 when we built an indoor facility. It was going to be very difficult being a non-profit, trying to get financing and what have you, but
Right.
just the way I've described it before, we were able to do it. The next big transformation really came about 5 years ago when we split up and actually we have a charitable foundation.
Right.
And then we also have a regular business
For
corporation
profit.
now. And we did that for many reasons.
Yeah.
If you want to grow, if you want to build more facilities, etc., etc., it's very difficult as a non-profit.
Right.
So again, just through knowledge that I'd gained, the willingness to ask a friend. I've got friends who are CFOs of public companies that know how to deal with banks and put presentations on more so than I will. And I've never been afraid to ask. They've shared knowledge with me, and we've been able to put those things together and build facilities which have allowed us to do more, and it's been very successful.
How easy a culture is it, in your view, to actually really build a business here? So you've gone from a stage of being a non-profit to a for-profit business. You've maintained the foundation entity, but you've really now amped it up where you've gone from you to 50 staff in a relatively short amount of time with a huge amount of outreach. How easy has that been to really build a business? Now I know it's going to be hard to build a business, period, but how easy has that been for you to leverage the networks, the different talents that exist? And then I guess the real question is, the business culture here is one of, I see it as very much can do in the business we're in. Do you see that as well? Or?
Yeah, I've, if I go back to the days of Montague Boys Club,
Right.
First off, it's support from the local council and various things like that.
Right.
Our license plate in New Hampshire is live free or die.
Yeah.
So it's very independent. So
Right.
by working with banks, financial institutions, and trying to present the business plan, pro forma, etc. I've 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 even found the people that have said no to me helpful in a sense that if you try to do this or if you do this, so
Right.
again, it's just by um, being professional and being courteous and what have you that
Yeah.
doors have opened for us. And you know, the key to our success, in all honesty, has been hard work
Right.
and diligence and trying to do the right thing. But you said about this can do, a person who helped bring the World Cup to America back in 1994 once asked me to spell American, and
Right.
he corrected me when I spelt it correctly. He said
Right.
it's AMERI can,
Right.
and I've it's always stuck with me,
Right.
because it is that can do attitude over here that you can knock on doors and try and have a belief that you want to make this work, and
Right.
there's and it's been very successful for us.
What would you say if I'm a business watching this from the northeast and I'm in life sciences, or maybe a university, I could be any industry in fact. What would you say the opportunity is genuinely for them when they look at the northeast of the US, the New England area, and they come to Boston? What do you really think the opportunity is for them when they come here?
Well, networking is a huge thing. I
Right.
mean, if I told you some of the relationships that I have being involved in a sports club, yet the relationships are with people who have been extremely successful in business and what have you. So the networking is one. Um, I'm a big believer that you um, can learn of other people's experiences, whether they've failed, whether they've been successful.
Yeah.
So having an opportunity to come over here and you know listen to other companies or other people that have started a software company
Right.
or have taken like the sport of soccer and turned it into a major club that now does baseball and lacrosse and all of these other things. It's it's an opportunity. So I run a club to club summit each year where we bring in about 60 clubs from across the United States, and we all just try and learn off each other.
Right.
And if you look at my business, typically the people involved are typically very good at coaching or
Right.
very good with kids, but they may not have a particularly good business sense.
Right.
Then again, you may have people who are in the business side who are just in it for money
Yeah.
and don't get the kids side.
Right.
So we try to overlap the two, and how by being professional, being
Yeah.
courteous, and trying to do the right thing can lead to more and more things. So I think that the opportunity for anybody to come over here, particularly the fact that it's really not that far away,
Right.
and the universities here. I mean, I was back home in Newcastle a year ago looking at Northumbria University with my son,
Yeah.
and I was just blown away because back in my day it was Newcastle Poly,
Right.
and now looking at Northumbria University, without being disrespectful, it's a totally different it's a totally different school.
Yes.
And then on top of that, you've got Newcastle University. So just coming over, if you asked any American, about Newcastle, they might say carrying coals to Newcastle, or
Yeah.
it's how far is that from London, or what have you. Well,
Right.
you know as well as I do
Right.
that the Northeast is a thriving
Yeah.
business community, call centers, energy, all
Yeah.
these new things that are happening. You just got to look at the River Tyne
Right.
and see the difference. And
Yeah.
so I would encourage anybody for the opportunity to come over here purely from a networking, get your eyes open, and realize that there's a lot of opportunities.
I would. It's funny you say that because I've travelled. I get back about 5 times a year to the US because I've still got to the UK. Sorry, because I've got family still in the West End. But I would say that what I've seen in the last certainly 5 years. I mean, I've lived in the US since 2000. What I would say is what I've seen in the last probably 5 years, and it's probably even more than that, is the change in infrastructure there. But I think also the confidence to drive an aggressive business that really has impact is pretty dramatic. I think the thing I would add to that is when you couple that with the ability to drive an operation here in the US and take advantage of the US market, leveraging New England, say, as a base, the opportunity spilling out of that is quite dramatic. And I would say, I mean, I'm blessed to work for a large organisation that is very well embedded globally already anyway. But what I would say is, as we look at this region as a market, our growth here has been 20 points plus per year, and it's happened in tandem with a business growing like that anyway. Yes, we've got a great portfolio of products, but I think it's more the rate at which the business grows here, but also things like this being the Centre for Healthcare Life Sciences. Clearly for academia, skills here are absolutely not a problem to get at all because of all the university networks. And I get that same sense. I know Newcastle has the best student retention rate,
Yeah.
and I think it's more awareness and creating awareness about that, but knowing that you've got that arsenal that you can kind of leverage and depend upon, that makes it easier to be more successful. That's what I've seen. And I've seen businesses, my friends that have businesses in healthcare life sciences, if we look at sports as an example, it just takes the, I think, willingness to take a look at that. What I would also say is I think the infrastructure wrapped around to make it successful. What part of this delegation is about is if you need questions answered or you need to validate something as you qualify the opportunity, there's a huge network of people here who can actually help you do that. And I think that really enables that almost takes some of the risk out of, do we explore this as an opportunity or do we not? And I think that's, you go back to your network, I mean, that's been key for you.
Well, the confidence that I've got, I mean, where we are now is not where I originally intended to be there. And having the confidence and gaining the knowledge that I've got, and, like you said before, that can-do attitude. And I mean, everybody that I've met over here in the States that's been to Newcastle always speak of it as very fondly in terms of the time that they've had there and the way the city looks and the transformation. So I think the mirrors between the northeast of this country as well as the northeast back home are tremendous, and the fact that it's really not that far away,
right?
And for companies, even for companies in Newcastle that are maybe like us, I think we're just going to be in New Hampshire or they're just going to be in the northeast, and we now have clubs as far north as Bangor, Maine, which is about 3.5 hours north of our main hub, and then we also have clubs in Massachusetts now. So, and it's not rocket science, it's just networking and having the confidence to take the gloves off and have a go.
So what's your final, any final remarks for folks that are watching this thinking about coming over?
I would just encourage them to come over. It's a fantastic place. Again, I don't want to say that I've been given a gentle hand because I've got an English accent, but I think there's definitely a fondness for people from the UK over here. Obviously, the similarity in cultures and what have you, but it's just a great opportunity. The networking alone, I think, would open people's eyes, and the friendships, relationships. From coming over with people from the northeast as well as the people that they'll meet here. There's no more hospitable place in England than the northeast, and there's no more hospitable people than Americans, in my opinion, from my experience. So I think it's a great match.
Good. So the last thing we did on the other session that we did was gave out some contact information at the very end of this video. As with the last one, there'll be a contact card that you can kind of reach out. But Paul, do you want to give out your mail address?
Our website is seacoastunited.com, so certainly welcome to take a look at that. My email address is pwillis@seacoastunited.com, so if anybody would have any questions, curiosities, etc., by all means feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be sure to get back to you.
Great. My email is sramsay, it's ramsay at microsoft.com. Feel free to reach out also to the British Consulate in Boston. Their contact information will be at the end of this. We'll look forward to seeing you guys when you come over in October. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.